welcome to Fanacek. Eddie Deezen, the legend. Thank you for doing this, man.
Sure, Fanacek.
I'm so happy to have you on here. As I've told you, my wife, one of her favorite films of all time is Grease. You've got tons of credits. I think 93 acting credits. I think that's what I saw on IMDb, with maybe one more coming. And I just couldn't be happier to have you on.
Well, thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Well, thank you, man. I'm just going to dive right in if it's okay with you.
Sure.
Excellent. So we have some things in common. Although I'm not from Maryland, you're a Maryland man, but you relocated to Hollywood shortly after graduating high school to pursue stand-up comedy. Is that correct?
Yes. To get into showbiz. My goal was ultimately to get in the movies, but all I had for me when I came out, all you can do is do stand-up. I was completely unknown, so I did some stand-up at the Comedy Store. I did 2 gigs at the West Hollywood Comedy Store. Then they moved me to Westwood. The first 2 I did really good. I got big laughs. Then they moved me to Westwood and I tanked. I had trouble memorizing lines. I used little cue cards from the word go. I had to read it off. It would open up. Hi, here he is, Eddie Deezen. There was applause, applause, applause. Sure, but will you respect me in the morning? That was my opening line. And anyway, I bombed in Westwood. I said, this isn't for me. So I never did stand up again. Oh, yes, I did. My TV debut was on the Gong Show later that year in November of 1976. And I did my stand up routine there. And I got gonged by Paul Williams. But I had my little index cards and I did my act.
That's amazing. So that's funny. You were on the Gong Show November of 76. That's when I was born, November of 76. So,
what day?
November 23rd.
Oh, close. Okay. I was November 29th was my show. So you were 6 days from my TV debut.
6 days old. I love it. And so when I said we had something in common, same thing. So I grew up in New York, but when I relocated to Hollywood, one of the first things I did was I did stand up at the Comedy Store. And I did it on Sunset there. I did not do well though, Eddie. Did not go my way.
Okay. You did the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard?
Yeah.
That's the one I was at. Okay. And I was mistaken. That's not West Hollywood. That was just Hollywood.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. That's the one I was.
We were at the same one. No, yeah.
We were at the same one. I went, Tom, I'm sorry, Fanacek, please forgive me. Fanacek, when I came to Hollywood, I was with my friend Mike, and the first day or so, like 2 days we went to the Comedy Store. Little did we know the rules of nightclubs is you don't want to, they seat us in front. We thought it was real cool. Little do we know you don't want to sit in the front of the Comedy Store because everybody will insult you. You know, these are all these young comics and you get insulted. So it's better to get a seat back there. But we were there before I performed. Do you remember
any of the comics out working at the store at that time or no?
Yeah, we saw Jimmy Walker. Jimmy Walker was the first star. He was there. And I remember him, we were right in the front row. And I remember him looking down and seeing him, and I was scared he was going to say something, but he was a very nice guy. But I remember being, this close. And he was the rage then, he was Jimmy Walker Dynamite, Sure. He was probably the biggest comedian going then.
So that was before Good Times or during Good Times?
No, this was during Good Times. Yeah, this was 76. So Good Times was rolling. Yeah, it was probably the peak of Good Times.
Well, cool, man. So, yeah, I just love that. I saw the Comedy Store. I did some open mic stuff there. It didn't go well. But one thing I read about you, too, before we hop into the credits, is you're a big Beatles fan. I see the Hard Day's Night poster behind you.
Yes,
you love Beatles
my
trivia.
favorite movie
I love the Beatles.
Yeah.
Same. I want you to throw one at me. Don't give me like your best trivia, but I want to see if I can take an Eddie Deezen challenge. I want you to throw some trivia.
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay, I'll give you one. It is one of my favorites. Who was the only Beatle to kiss a man? I mean, this is while the Beatles were together. Who was the only Beatle to kiss a man publicly?
I would say John Lennon.
Nope. Good. That's who you would think.
Yeah, that's exactly who you think. Yeah, who was
There's a story behind it, but no, it's a great Beatles question that stumps everybody.
Who was it?
It was Ringo. The Beatles met John Aston. I think it was in an airport or something. They met John Aston Gomez, and Ringo started kissing him up his arm. Tish, and he kissed him up his arm. So he's the only Beatle to kiss a man.
Okay. I never knew that Ringo kissed a man. I certainly didn't know.
Yeah, Ringo kissed John Aston. You remember the Addams Family? Gomez would kiss Morticia. Tish, that's French. When she was young, he kissed her up the arm, and Ringo kissed him up the arm. So he's the only Beatle to kiss a man.
Love it.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second. I'm popping my. I just love that, like all of your just experience in, in the film and TV industry just came out just now when you were like, should we take it back to the joke? Like, should we go back before the joke and we can like?
Oh, sure.
That point?
Oh yeah. No, I want you to have a good podcast. I wanted to be professional.
Yeah,
that was just a glitch. Sorry, but glitches happen.
They sure do, Eddie. You're a pro.
Take it back.
So speaking of the Beatles, when I look at you transitioning to acting, one of your earliest film roles, 1978's I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Yeah.
What's cool about that is actually something about my wife. So the movie's about those kids going to see the Beatles on Ed Sullivan.
Yes.
My wife, Liza, her grandfather was one of the producers of the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, my goodness.
So he met the Beatles. Her mom met the Beatles. So
oh, my God.
And that
How cool
movie
is that?
it was amazing. And you know what's cool, Eddie? I've got cufflinks that he used to wear on show nights, his CBS cufflinks. So I've got those, and those are the cufflinks he was wearing when he shook hands with the Beatles. So that's as close as my handle ever gets to the Beatles.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I remember watching the show. I remember when they came to America. I remember that Friday. We were all talking about him. I remember clearly. I said, one of them's named George Harrison. I remember the car driving, and I remember saying that. And we watched him on that Sunday. You know, we were enthralled. It was literally like it was people from another planet. It was like Martians that come down. The way, you know, we all just were so focused on him. This new curiosity, you know, this amazing thing. It was literally like they came from another planet.
Wow, that's incredible. And that movie was directed by Zemeckis, huh? I Want to Hold Your
Best
Hand.
director I ever worked with. And then he remembered me all these years later in 2004 and wrote me into the Polar Express.
Same as you. I'm checking out my Christmas presents. I want to make sure I'm getting everything on my list. All I found was one present, and all I had was a bunch of stupid underwear.
So he's by far my best. He's my favorite director. I think he's the best director. Not that Spielberg was great. Spielberg's the greatest, but I think Bob, I'm more comedy, and Bob is more of a comedy director than Steven. Steven will have comedy within his films. Steven will do a great film with comedy moments, whereas Bob can do like an hour and a half or 2 hours of straight comedy. But Steven is, of course, you know, Steven Spielberg is the great director, of course.
Sure. No, I mean, you got Zemeckis early too. That was like 7 years before Back to the Future. That's amazing.
That was his first film. And you know, Steven was the assistant on that. He was like a mentor to Bob. He'd hang around the set and we talked to him. And I wrote a joke. Steven and I were hanging around the set, and I wrote a joke in the film, and I made Steven laugh. Now it's a mild joke by today's standards, but this was a joke. There was a scene in the movie where Dick Miller comes and gets me, and he goes, "There you are." Now he goes, "Now I got you, little shit." And I go, "Who you calling little?" Now that joke is kind of mild, but Steven broke up. I broke up, and then he went to tell Bob, and he goes, "Eddie's going to do this joke," and I did that joke, and you'll see that joke in the film. But Steven and I would hang out and say, you know, he was Steven Spielberg. He was a really big director, but he wasn't the myth he is now, like where he's like Hitchcock and this incredible myth, you know. But he was more like a regular guy then. But he was still a big star.
Let's skip Grease for a second. Let's just go to 1941. I mean, you're getting Spielberg like right after Jaws. You're getting Belushi and Aykroyd, height of their powers.
Right.
What was that set like?
Oh my God, so much fun. Steven was wonderful. He was marvelous. I threw up in his toilet, you know. Murray Hamilton and I were on the Ferris wheel the whole movie. You know, we spent the whole movie on a Ferris wheel. So Steven was whipping us around one day real fast, and I got nauseous. I have bad motion sickness. And I got off and I go, "Steven, please, can I lay down?" And he had his secretary take me to his dressing room. So I went with her to the dressing room. I lay down in Steven's cot. So I'm laying there. I started to feel really queasy. So I crawled like a dog on my hands and knees to his toilet, and I threw up. I literally just blew chunks. And then it dawned on me, I just threw up at Steven Spielberg's toilet. It was like an honor. Now here's a trivia question about me. I'm the only actor in history I threw up in 3 of my first 4 movies. Grease.
Did you really?
Yeah, the last day of Grease was the carnival. See, we were filming at the carnival, and our director, Randall Kleiser, and the producer, Alan Carr, were there, and they said, "Eddie, will you get in one of the rides?" It was a twirling ride that spins around. You know, they have all these spinny rides at a carnival. And I go, "Please, I get motion sickness. Please, I don't want it." And we went back and forth, and, you know, what choice do I have? It's my first movie. So they get me in the ride. They strap me down. They whirl us around a lot of times. So I get out. I'm all, you know, my legs are wobbling. And I went out to the middle of a field. I went away from everybody. I was in the middle of a pasture, and I just heaved up in the pasture. So I threw up. That was my last day of Grease, August 2nd, 1977. Now, my second one was called Laser Blast. I'm sorry, not Laser Blast. Laser Blast was my second. Then I Want to Hold Your Hand was my third. 1941 was my fourth. So my throw-up story for I Want to Hold Your Hand is we finished I Want to Hold Your Hand, and the last day Bob Zemeckis gave us all cigars, you know, congratulatory cigars. So I'm smoking it. It was great. What I didn't know is you don't inhale cigars. Nobody told me. So I smoked the whole thing. I inhaled it. Then I felt really nauseous, and I threw up. So I threw up in 3 of my first 4 movies.
That's interesting. So, you know, one thing I read about 1941, obviously it wasn't considered one of Spielberg's hits, right? But it still made like over $90 million. But I read
at the time it was like huge. It was like 41 million. And that was like, at the time it was astronomical, you know, which it's like peanuts now. But that was like a huge figure at the time.
Well, that movie was stacked too, like, because I know like Treat Williams, Ned Beatty, Christopher Lee, Tim Matheson. That movie was stacked. But I read something interesting. I read that you passed on Meatballs to do 1941. Is that true?
Yeah, I use the word pass. It depends what term. I would have done it in a second. I love Bill Murray. I would love to have done it. It would have been an honor. But I was literally so busy in those days. I did all 3 of those in 77. I did Laser Blast, Grease, in 1941. So I was pretty much booked up that year. So they had me, they wrote the role of Spaz in for me, but I couldn't do it. It's not like I turned it down. I would love to have done it. You know, it's a coincidence. And then later I'd go for like 2 or 3 year periods. I couldn't get any work. But that was just, you know, the capriciousness of showbiz, you know, that it just happened. I was really busy that year.
Got it. I was just curious because Meatballs has withstood the test of time, but 1941, just between Spielberg, Belushi, and Aykroyd, I mean, I feel like you got to do that movie. So, but that would have been cool to see.
Yeah,
with
of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I wanted to work with Steven. He was a friend. And yeah, you're going to pick that. And I love John Belushi. John Belushi was at the rap party for I Want to Hold Your Hand, and I met him. He was sitting on a piano stool alone in the party. There's a party. I swear he was just sitting alone. So I said hi, and I sat down beside him, and we started kibitzing and chatting. And we talked. He was a very, very serious man. We talked about religion and metaphysical stuff, I remember, not comedy. But then we talked a little comedy, and I said, I like that line you do on the show. You remember at Saturday Night Live? I don't know if you remember this, but you have a line, you go, but no.
Oh, sure.
You go, oh, you could have done that, but no. And I said, I really like that but no guy. And he goes, oh, do you really like that? So he was like, this is John Belushi, you know. I'm like this little punk kid, but he was surprised that I liked the line. I said, yeah, that's really funny. And he was just a wonderful guy. Yeah.
I love Belushi.
Oh, yeah. Just the nicest guy you could imagine. Total professional.
You know, I feel like had he lived, he would have had a really good dramatic career too. I feel like he was limited in. I mean, he was great comedic acting, but I mean, I feel like he could have really had an amazing dramatic career as well had he not.
Yeah,
passed away.
Yeah. Well, Stevie and I watched one of his films. It was a dramatic role. I think it was Old Boyfriends, and he was very good in that. He was like a singer. So I totally see your point. I totally can see it. If somebody had got him off the drugs and, you know, sobered him up, he could have been great. He had so much talent. He had so much ahead of him. Yeah,
because a lot of his early stuff, like he did a lot of summer stock over the years. He had a lot of theater background. But so we got to do it. You know, we got to talk about 1978's Grease. I have one quick question. I'm going to hand it off to my wife. But while you guys are making this movie, a bunch of young people filming this movie, Eddie, did you have any inkling that you were making an iconic film? Did you guys know this, or?
That's one of the questions I get most asked. I would say that's one of my top 2 questions. They go, did you know it was such a big hit? My honest answer is, first of all, I was naive. It was my first film, so you don't know any better. But I thought it was going to be a hit. But I think everybody doing the first film thinks it's going to be a hit. You don't know what a bomb is when you do your first movie. You're just so excited to get into a movie. So even the lowest people, they go, oh, this movie will be a hit, you know. But I thought so because John was so red hot. I knew John was like the thing, man. He was like the hottest star in Hollywood. Saturday Night Fever had come out, so I knew he had something going. And there was just an excitement about it. I think we all kind of thought it would be a hit. That's how I felt.
Excellent. Well, I'm gonna let my wife ask some questions because she's a major Grease fan.
Okay, sure. Whatever you want to ask.
Mrs. Fanacek here.
Hi, Mrs. Fanacek.
Enter myself. Hi, Eddie. I'm so excited. Okay. I don't research everything like Fanacek does. I'm just a mega fan. Out of every movie that has ever been made up until this point in time, I have seen Grease, I think 85 times. Oh my goodness. I saw it when I was, and that's not an exaggeration. I saw it when I was 11.
Oh my goodness.
And I just would watch it all the time. There was no computer, there was no internet. I just watched it on repeat. That and like Fugitive.
Yeah, it is. It's a juggernaut. It's definitely a juggernaut. And one phenomenon I've seen, or one thing that I've seen of it, is I think it's more popular with women than men. It's popular with both, but the people exactly like you, Mrs. Fanacek, it's the girls that go, I've seen it 100 times. I talked to 3 girls. I broke my tape. You know, when it was back on VHS, I played it so many times. I literally broke my tape. Or women, I've seen it 100 times. Blah, blah, blah. It's my favorite movie. You get it from both, but it does something to women more. I don't know if it's this, because we all love the music. It's a fun movie. It's a great comedy. Stevie and I were watching it the other day, and I realized all these years, it's a musical. We all go, Grease the musical, but it's a musical comedy. It's hilarious comedy. It's like a satire of the 50s, how goofy these people were, how dumb the T-Birds are, you know? Yeah.
It was just so much fun. So whenever I think of your character, you know, Fanacek told me that you were going to be on, and I was like, you know, the line that comes to me immediately is, hey, Eugene, when you're coming down the thing and they're messing with you.
Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Hey, Eugene. Hi, Check, buddy. Hey, what's wrong with your glasses? I get astigmatism. Oh, too bad. Come on, sit off. Sorry, Eugene. Sorry about that. Hey, Eugene, I'll get it. Here you go, Eugene. Thanks, Sonny. See you, Fruit Boots.
Did you, or do you still just get people yelling that at you?
Yes, I do, actually. Yes, I do. People say that to me occasionally. Yeah, and I remember. And I just want to tell you about that scene. This is a commentary on John Travolta. We did that scene. That was my first scene I ever filmed in a movie. So I do it, first take. They mess up my hair, you know, and mess up my glasses. Cut, you know, and John Travolta. Are you okay, buddy? Are you all right, buddy? He made sure. We did take 2. They messed up my hair, cut. John, are you okay, buddy? Are you all right? He made sure I was okay after every take. Every take he'd say, are you okay? Are you doing all right, buddy? He called me buddy, but he'd always ask me after every take. He was a tremendously kind person. He was just a really nice guy. It's an adjective that's not used a lot nowadays, but John Travolta was a kind man. He was really, truly kind. He just had a really sweet heart.
Yeah, that I was going to ask you about him. He was I had a giant crush on him because of Grease.
Yeah. He's a total mensch like you wouldn't believe.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So I wanted just to get any stories you had, just the whole National Bandstand scene. It was just
sure.
So much
let's
dancing,
see.
and I mean, you.
Well, I remember. Okay, we had to keep it sealed off. We were in a school auditorium. It was like one of the high schools we went to. We filmed at 3 different high schools, but it was one of those. Now, there were planes going over there, and also there was like a hog butcher factory or some kind of an animal factory, some kind of where they were killing pigs or something, and it was a horrible stench. So we had to have the windows closed. They couldn't be open, and it was the middle of summer in Los Angeles. So it was literally 116 degrees. And 110, we were getting in the hundreds those days. And one day it reached a peak of 116. I think it like broke the record that year. So Michael Tucci, who's which one is Michael Tucci? One of the T-Birds, not Duty, but which one?
I thought maybe it was Duty, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, that's Barry Pearl.
Sunny?
Michael's son, that's Sonny. He actually fainted. He collapsed from the heat, and he had to be rushed to the hospital. Oh, no. And several of the extras passed out from the heat. It was just overwhelming. And I just remember how hot it is. I remember going like this all the time. I kept fanning myself all through it. I remember before the takes, just to try to get some kind of air, I don't think we even had fans. And it was just really hot. It was a mob scene, because we had all the dancers, all these extras, all the cast was there, all the, all the teachers, everybody was there. It was a mob scene. And I remember how much fun it was. I remember them playing Hound Dog, which is my favorite Elvis song. And we kept doing that over and over. We put on Hound Dog. And I was just I go, my God, I'm listening to Hound Dog. I'm in the movies. I'm in Grease. I was just so happy. And I remember dancing around to that. Now, I remember dancing. It was just joyful. We were all dancing and having a real fun time. It was just a really fun time. Yeah.
What was the rehearsal process like for that?
Okay. They rehearsed the dancers and all their steps. This is all for the movie. And these were all professional dancers. They're all from Broadway or they've done plays. I was probably the only one in this class who could do nothing. I was like, do you ever see I Love Lucy, where Lucy's trying to dance with the chorus girls and she's out of step, I was like the I Love Lucy. They would all do these choreographed. Like we had Baryshnikov visited one day, and I think this was him. I think he visited and we put on a show for him. And I'm like I Love Lucy in back. I'm like Lucille Ball doing out of step and everybody else in perfect synchronicity, So I was the one person who had absolutely no talent dancing. I had no talent singing, and they could all sing. So I was kind of the oddball, but I just remember the joy and exhilaration of it. I'm trying to remember if there's any. Oh yeah, I was good friends with Eve Arden. I remember we would chat all the time. Eve was there, and we would talk all the time. She'd tell me stories about the Marx Brothers. I remember, and I remember her specific words. I don't remember anything about what she said, but she said Harpo was a lamb. I remember she was telling me about Harpo with the Marx Brothers, and she said Groucho was this and Chico was that. And she goes, and Harpo was a lamb. I remember Eve Arden in her Eve Arden voice said that.
Interesting. Yeah. So was there anything unique about you getting that part?
I went into the audition, and I was the only one. I put on my Pee Wee. This is long before Pee Wee Herman, who's a friend of mine, Paul Rubens. But I put on a white ice cream suit to audition. I put on white bucks. I got them, they were cheap. I got them at Zodi's or whatever market there was, And I came in, a little bow tie. My agent got me the role, and I'll tell you the aftermath too, which you could take it as religious or non-secular, whatever, however you want to do it. Or secular, I'm sorry. But anyway, I went in and I had the bow tie. I went in, everybody was dressed as Fonzie. All the guys had on leather jackets, or they had on white t-shirts like Marlon Brando, with the cigarettes rolled up in their sleeve, hair greased back. So there were all these guys. The other half was pretty girls, pretty teenage girls in poodle skirts and saddle shoes. And I'm there, the only nerd. I was the only nerd there. So I'm sitting alone. Finally, they had people audition. They called me in. So I go in. Alan Carr, the producer, Brendel Kleiser, the director, and Joel from the casting director were all there. So I'm there and I audition, and I didn't have hardly any lines, and they talked to me. And while I was talking to them, I saw them keep nudging each other. They would nudge each other. I kept seeing them nudge each other. And I knew that was a good sign. I just think they nudge each other. Yeah. Anyway, we got the call a day or two later, Eddie's in Greece. So, of course, I called my family. Oh, I'm in this movie with John Travolta's Grease. And, we didn't have media. We didn't have Facebook in those days. So I called all my friends, whatever friends I had their numbers, and I called them and told them the good news. So about 3 or 4 days later, the casting person at Paramount called. They told my agent, who was Regina Penner at the time, they told her, we don't need Eugene in Grease anymore. It's a very small role. We're going to cut it out.
Oh my gosh.
So she told me that. So, my heart sank. I want to jump off a cliff. I felt so bad. I'm not in the movie anymore. I had to tell my parents the bad news. I felt so horrible. So my agent said, we're going to go to church and pray. Now, I had been going to this church before I got in the movies. I'd been out there for 2 years before I got Grease. I went with my friend. She was a Catholic, I think. Her name was Mrs. Kelly. We go to church and pray. Even though I'm Jewish, we go and pray together. I go, please, God, let me get in the movie someday. Let me get my break. And then I did get Grease, so maybe it helped. But we went to church, and she said, we're going to light candles, which I'd never done. And I go, I'm Jewish. How do you do it? She goes, you light a candle on the altar and then you pray to God what you want. So we lit candles together, me and Regina. We lit our candles and we left church, and I prayed, please let something good happen. So anyway, a day or two later, Paramount called back and they said, Eddie's back in the movie. We're putting Eugene back in the movie.
Oh my gosh.
Now, so again, I tell this story a million times. Religious people go, oh, see, you should believe in God now. That shows God helped you. And my secular friends go, it's a total coincidence. You just got a lucky break. So you can take the story however you want, but it's 100% true story.
Just light some candles and pray.
Yeah.
Our prayer.
And not only that, but you're all over the movie. Like I showed my 12-year-old daughter Grease a couple months ago because I was like, you're ready. Like you're ready for Grease. And it was the best.
Yeah, because you got to be careful. There's some dirty lyrics in there.
I know, but you know, yeah, she's Fanacek's kid.
But they go by it. Mrs. Fanacek, I didn't know this for years. I saw Grease and I've been watching it. I've seen it a dozen times. Then we had a drive-in sing-along, outdoor drive-in. It was so fun. 2006, and they had the words on the screen.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when I finally saw after all those years how dirty Grease Lightning is. My favorite song. That's a dirty song. They're throwing 4-letter words all over the place, and 3-letter words and 5-letter words.
There are plenty of things I did not pick up on until I got.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know it was such a dirty film.
Yeah. But it's so funny that they were saying you're not in it because I reminded myself today. I went and I was like, all right, let me remind myself of all the scenes because I know some of the classic scenes. So I looked up a compilation and you're all over it. I mean,
thank you. Yeah, I'm in the back of like the dancing scene. You can see me hopping around all over. I was through there. Yeah. And I actually did a lot more. If you see the play, Eugene is a much bigger role than I am in the film.
I know the play well. Yes.
Yeah, when I got hired for the film, the play was playing in LA, and I went to see it. And I go, that's going to be my role. But I didn't have. I think I had 4 lines. I when they had me on the stairs, I ad-lib. I go, I got astigmatism. And then when I threw the pie, they go, you're a good pitcher. And I go, thank you. They go, what's your name? And I go, it's Eugene. So I have 4 or 5 words. But, Cindy and I were watching it, and every time I came, I go, oh, there you are, there you are.
Yeah, but everyone remembers you.
Well, thank you.
Why don't you regale him with your history with Grease? You were.
So in high school we did Grease. Grease was my senior year of high school musical. Yeah, so we did, and I was Rizzo.
Okay.
I was
so you were one of the bad girls, the pink ladies.
Yeah. It was, my senior year of high school, being a theater person, I got to kind of say like who I wanted to be. And Sandy, I'm not a singer. So Sandy was not for me. So Rizzo was super fun.
Well, you're dark haired, you're raven haired. So you couldn't be Sandy or you couldn't be,
right. And I had short hair.
You couldn't be Patty Simcox.
Yeah, I couldn't be Patty Simcox. Yeah, I had short hair too in high school when we did it.
Okay. And what we saw? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Oh, no, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you were talking about Rizzo, the Stalker Channing. Stevie and I were watching. We watched it about a month ago, and I saw her, and I saw what an incredible actress she is. It's like she's in a different movie. Yeah. She's like a very dramatic, serious character. She has a lot of head problems. She has a lot of problems, and issues. And then she's not a singer. And then she does that, the way that beautiful scene between her and Olivia at the end where they resolve it. And Olivia goes, I'm sorry we couldn't be better friends, I swear that makes you cry. And she goes, that's okay. Hey, Sandy, thanks. That's a beautiful scene. Yeah. And then she goes right into that song and she knocks it out of the park. She's so talented.
Yeah, even when I rewatched it, I was like, she's got like a different energy going on.
Yeah, exactly. She puts out very serious vibes in that film. She's almost like a Hitchcock character.
Yeah. She kind of gave it a little bit of, that real depth, some emotional depth in there. Yeah. She was great.
She was wonderful.
Yeah, Stalker Channing was fantastic. But
so were you good as Rizzo? Tell me about you being Rizzo.
Oh, it was basically like I'm not much of a singer, and so I took singing lessons because I was like, I can't get on the stage and suck. Like I really want to do this. I was really excited about it, especially because of all my love of Grease. And I took singing lessons, and they were like, you should ask them to drop it a key. Like they should drop a key, and then you could like hit these notes, and you could do it. And our musical guy was like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. So I think there were a couple where I just kind of like sang, talked.
Okay.
But I do have rhythm and I can dance. So the dance scene, I mean, it was so much fun. And it was just, it was my senior in high school. So it was a lot of friends and.
Okay. So
really
you did
cool.
good.
Yeah. It was just really fun.
She did great. She did great.
I did a good job.
Well done. How many performances?
What's that?
How many performances?
Oh gosh. It was just high school. So probably 4 or 5.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
It was just senior year. But then I did, I never actually worked with him, but I went to USC and Kelly Ward. He was their musical theater teacher there.
Oh, wonderful guy. I love Kelly.
Yeah.
He's a great director now. He does a lot of directing. Yeah. Super nice guy.
Yeah. And that was my closest moment to someone in Greece until right now.
Okay, cool.
I know you have probably lots of notes to get back to, so I don't want to
Hey, I'm enjoying this.
Hijack this conversation anymore.
Well, I'm glad she had the opportunity to talk to you. I mean, like I said, we've been together now for 17 years, married for 15. And Grease has always been one of her favorites. And it's funny, you guys talking about Dirty. I grew up watching Grease, but I didn't catch how dirty it was either till way later.
Yeah.
It really does.
Well, Grease Lightning was always my favorite number from the word go. And that's the number that really bowled me over when I saw the lyrics come on screen. And it just was a revelation. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I wanted to shift gears, but let's break it up real quick. Okay. I want one more shot at some Beatles trivia, Eddie. You got another one for me? What else?
Another question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me think of one for you. Let's see.
I need a softball, man.
Okay. Please give me 1 second. I'm trying to think of a good one.
I want to redeem myself. I love the Beatles.
Okay. Okay, I'll give you a relatively easy one. What was Help originally called? The movie Help. What was it originally going to be called?
8 Arms to Hold You?
You got it. Okay, so you're not a dilettante. You're no amateur. Let me get harder then. I wanted to see if you were just an amateur. You know your stuff. Okay, how about
now we need the Jeopardy music.
Yeah, exactly. You sprung the song. I could have thought of them. Let me think of them.
This is a great. Eddie Deezen's quizzing me on Beatles stuff. This is a big moment for me. I love it.
Okay, how many names can you name that the band was before they became the Beatles? Let's see how good you are.
The Quarrymen, the Silver Beatles, Johnny and the Moondogs.
Yeah.
That's one I can think of. Quarrymen, Silver Beatles, Johnny and the Moondogs. Of course, the Beatles, spelled differently, I think, at first.
Okay, how about John and Paul performed alone twice before George joined? Just John and Paul, like Simon and Garfunkel. What 2 names did they go on? 2 different names.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Well, at least one. They were the Nerk twins once. I think it's N-E-R-K or N-U-R-K.
Yeah, I read that. You're right. Yeah.
And what name did they go under that had to do with their clothing?
I don't know.
Okay, one night the Beatles, this might have been after George, but one night all the Beatles turned on, or the Quarrymen, they all came on stage and they had different color shirts. So that night they called themselves the Rainbows.
Oh man, I think I've read that too. Good stuff. Eddie's no joke. He's a professional. Let's get back to some movie stuff, because this next one, Eddie, is near and dear to my heart. So in 2nd grade, my neighbor across the street, he and I were obsessed with the movie Zapped.
Okay.
I don't even know if that movie had a theatrical release, but it sure had a long life on VHS because we'd watch it repeatedly. And we'll talk about the Fall Guy later, but between the Fall Guy and Zapped, I mean, you work with Heather Thomas twice. Any good Heather Thomas stories?
Beautiful. Just so beautiful, so sweet, and so kind. It's funny you asked that, Fanacek. Stevie just showed me my Fall Guy like a week ago. I swear to God, I made that 40 years ago. I'd never seen it, and Stevie showed it to me like a week ago, so I just saw it. Lee Majors, the nicest guy in the world, just so wonderful. And I loved Doug Barr, and I loved Heather Thomas. That was just a very happy shoot. Super nice cast. Heather Thomas was as beautiful as she is. She's that nice of a person. She's just so adorable. I love working with her.
That's great. I was actually I just watched your Fall Guy episode a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
The Lady in Green, correct? Is that what it's called? The lady?
I think so. Yeah.
The painting there. So so we can skip ahead. But I mean, one thing that's come up on my podcast a lot when we're talking about the 70s and 80s is I feel like there was that battle between Heather Locklear or Heather Thomas. And I've always been kind of more of a Heather Thomas person. And you've obviously worked with her twice.
No, I like Heather Thomas too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was a joy. I just want to say, Scott Baio was the nicest guy, and so was Willie Ames. I think I was only on that for like a day, and I love both of them. There was a guy on the set, a blonde guy, or like he was like the bad guy in the one thing, and he was kind of a jerk. I didn't like him, but I loved Scott and I loved Willie.
They must have gotten along because then they did. I think Charles in Charge came after that film, right?
Yeah, they were best friends. You could see they were best pals. Yeah.
All right, so then we don't talk too much about it, but you were one of the 7 actors invited back for Grease too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it depends on your perspective. It depends on your perspective. I wasn't that proud of that, but it was fun. I loved Dee Dee and Craterface, Dennis C. Stewart, who I loved. He was a good friend. When I was filming Grease, just to tell you something, I would take the bus. Literally, I couldn't drive, so I would get up. My call time was like 6 a.m. So I would take like 3 buses to get to Paramount Studios. I get up at 4 a.m. I'd set the alarm clock, get up at 4, and I'd take the bus to Paramount. So one day I'm talking in makeup about how I took the bus. And Dennis C. Stewart, Craterface, the bad guy, said, "You take the bus to the set every day?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Not anymore. I'm driving you every day." So he would come every day after that, and he'd pick me up and take me to the set. Just a super nice guy.
I heard, what's funny, Eddie? I heard that story. So I lived in LA for a number of years, like I said. And I remember taking those Dearly Departed tours. I don't know if you remember those, where they would drive around LA to kind of see some of the seedier locations of famous deaths. But then they would also along the way point stuff out. And so they went to the high school where you guys filmed the carnival scene for Grease. I'll never forget he told that story that Craterface would drive you to set every day. Yeah. And he passed away fairly recently, right?
I'm sorry?
Didn't he pass away fairly recently?
No, that was like 2010. So he was the first of the teenagers to pass away. He died long ago, sadly, long before his time. But he had the face of a villain, but it belied what he was. He was an incredibly nice, sweet guy.
Yeah. I remember. It's funny you told that story because I'd heard that story before. WarGames, man, another huge cultural hit. Did you? I mean, and this Rainy Nights, this is kind of a connection to Travolta too, because John Badham directed it, right? And he had done Saturday Night Fever.
Now people ask me, I've been asked more than once, what was it like to work for John Badham, this legendary director? I never did. My director was Marty Brest, who did Beverly Hills Cop the next year. But Marty Brest was originally hired to do WarGames. He directed 12 days, including my scene. Then they fired him. He was fired by the studio because they didn't like his dailies. And they hired John Badham. Now, John Badham looked over the dailies, and the only scene he liked was mine, the scene me and Maury did with Matthew. So that's the only scene of Marty Brest that's still in the movie. And that was, that was what happened. Matthew, I think maybe his first or second film. Matthew and I were driven. I only worked one day on it. It was just my scene. Sure. Matthew and I were driven to the set that day, and his father had just recently passed away, James Broderick. And I remember Matthew and I were kibitzing, chatting in the car, and I looked back when he was talking about his father, and he had tears in his eyes. He was like he's going to cry. He had really tears welling up. He was really close to his dad, and he was really a sweet guy.
Oh wow, that's awful to hear. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you didn't work with. So you worked with Martin Brest. I like Martin Brest. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that he started that, because I was reading about John Badham. John Badham now teaches, I guess, at Chapman University. And again, I was an actor, not nearly your level of success, and I did a lot of student films at Chapman University. In fact, it wasn't for Chapman University, Eddie, I may never have made any movies. So.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, John Badham teaches there now.
Okay, 2 WarGame stories. That when Marty was directing us, I was with Maury and Matthew, and I kept screwing up my scene over and over. I couldn't remember the words data encryption algorithm. It's easy to say now, data encryption, but I kept screwing them up. They'd go, take one, and I go, data endocrine algorithm, cut. Data endocrine algorithm, cut. I screwed up over and over. 20 takes, whatever. So they had to finally stop. Marty Brest crooks his finger, says, "Come on, Eddie, we're going to go for a little walk." So he puts his arm around my shoulder. He goes, "You're costing the studio money. We're going to get you these idiot cards, and you can read your roll off that." So they wrote my lines there with data encryption algorithm, and I did it in one take. Bang! I did it one take, and I realized this is so cool. Cue cards are the way to go. So it was just easy, and that kind of gave me a germ. And then I got into voiceovers a lot, and later on but that was the germ. That was like my first voiceover where I could read my lines like that. I did Polar Express. They had cue cards the whole movie. I did all Polar Express. I read off cue cards, and Fred Olin Ray, he'd have me little index cards around the set like I was Marlon Brando, and I would read my lines off the set like that. Anyway, we finished up Polar Express. And Tom Hanks, the last day of shooting, he goes, "What are you, fucking Marlon Brando?" He goes, "What the fuck? You have to use fucking cue card?" I mean, he was saying tongue in cheek. He was kidding, but he didn't say a word through the whole shoot. And then the last day, he jumped on me. Because he's such a pro, it's easy for him. But he was saying, "Why are you using these fucking cue cards?"
Didn't I think I read on Facebook? Didn't you almost have an opportunity to work with Brando and something? I mean, they couldn't get Brando.
No, that was Polar Express. Tom told me the story. He was good friends with Marlon Brando, and he wanted him, the hobo on the train that sits on top of the train. He wanted Marlon, him and Bob Zemeckis wanted Marlon to play that role. And Tom went to him. He said, can you play this role? He goes, we're going to make it easy for you. It'll just be 1 day's work. We'll knock it off in a day. You'll get cue cards. We'll make it roll light. We'll finish it as quick as we can. And he just said Marlon was just too sick. He said he was just too sick at that time. And he died that year. It was 2004. They tried to get him and he just died that year.
Oh, wow.
So I think this close to working with Brando, what an honor just to meet him, just to see him.
Yeah, that would be an experience, huh? What was filming that like? Was that all green screen? Where did you film?
It was a film called motion capture. It was a technique called motion capture. It was the first motion capture film. Somehow, Fanacek, it was like every day we put on scuba diver suits. Me, Tom, Peter Scolari, and Nona Gay, the four of us, we put on scuba diver suits. We'd have a great rubber hat glued to our heads. They glue it on, and then they'd mark 150 dots on our faces with a magic marker, literally. And then they would put these beads, these electric beads or something, 152 were glued to our face. And we filmed the film that way. We do our scene, hey, Santa Claus, how are you? Now we do our scene, cut, and they do that. Then little kids would do the same scene. They had a little kid Tom, a little kid me, a little kid Peter, a little kid None. And they would do the most of the same scene like us. And somehow it was morphed together. You'll see on screen, it looks like kids, but that's actually us talking and it's our emotions, but we're put into a kid's body. It's some kind of a process like that they did. Yeah.
Wow. How many days did you do that?
Oh, we were 10 weeks. We did 10 weeks. 10 weeks. I got that one. It was, a joy from beginning to end. I love Tom Hanks. He's my favorite star, so working with him. And the first day on the set, I came in the first day on the set. I was hired for this film with Bob Zemeckis. I knew nothing about Tom. And Bob said, we're going to do this thing called motion capture. Look, here's how it looks. And he showed this actor moving around in motion capture. And I go, that sounds like Tom Hanks. I didn't know. And then they told me, anyway, we're all waiting on the set. And I think I got word Tom was there, but there were like 100 of us waiting there. Tom Hanks comes bouncing in the room. He comes right up to me. He goes, hi, Eddie, I'm Tom. I'm going, no shit, Sherlock. Tom fucking Hanks, But I swear to God, he came up to me first and shook my hand first. And he was awesome. Just all the way through. He was the nicest guy. He is so great. He lived, his joy is making people happy. That's what he lives for. He's like, he plays Santa Claus in the movie. And I walk by him over there and I go, this is you. I go, this is you in another life. You're really Santa Claus. He just lives to make people happy, to bring people joy. That's what he does. He's a total character. He's real loose, like Tom Hanks. Never anything mean. Okay, here's another story. I was talking to Peter Scolari. Oh, no, I was talking to Tom on the set. Every morning I had the joy. Tom and I could talk every morning. We were waiting for our first take. And it's just me and Tom Hanks. And I could ask him anything I wanted. So this is the greatest privilege in the world. So one day I said, what was it like working with Jackie Gleason in Nothing in Common?
Oh yeah,
that was Gleason's last film. I'm a huge Honeymooners fan, and I love The Hustler. Same. But he goes, oh, Jackie was a great guy. He was a total professional. It was a privilege working. Blah blah blah. Nice story. That's it. So later in the day, I'm talking to Peter Scolari. I go, yeah, Tom was just telling me about Jackie Gleason. What a great guy he was. What a professional. And Peter goes, that's just like Tom. He goes, Jackie Gleason was a total dick to him. He was totally rude. He was unprofessional. He didn't treat him well. But Tom won't say a bad word about anybody. He only says nice stuff about people. And that got me a handle on Tom. He just won't say anything bad about people.
Interesting. And how beautiful is it that he's working with Peter Scolari at that point too?
Yeah, exactly. No, I had worked with Peter in something before, but I don't remember what it was. But I knew Peter when we did it. And he's the sweetest guy ever. He passed away when I was in the hospital, unfortunately. But I love Peter so much. And he was a great guy. Nona Gay, was Marvin Gaye's daughter. She would talk about her dad all the time. She was very proud. She was so sweet. One day we were in makeup. And we were talking about the best version of Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem. And I go, Jimi Hendrix has the best one on guitar, the best national anthem ever. And Nona goes, my dad sings the best national anthem ever. And we, so I took, I'm not going to say anything bad about Marvin Gaye, her father. So the next day she brings out a tape with a tape player. She put it in, and it's Marvin Gaye singing the national anthem. Beautiful rendition. And she goes, that's how the national anthem should be played. And she was just very proud of her father. And she was the sweetest girl. We finished the film. Okay. We're at the wrap party afterwards. Nona's standing there. She has a stack of envelopes, like about 100 envelopes. She had written a thank you note to every member of the cast and every member of the crew, the director, everybody. She put everybody involved a thank you note. And she's handing us all thank you notes she'd personally written to us. That's the kind of girl she is.
Wow. And the beauty of that movie too is, it's a holiday film. So every year, it's going to be back in the rotation. You get to experience it.
Fanacek, it was always on my bucket list. I'm Jewish, but I love Christmas is my favorite holiday. It's my favorite day of the year. And I'd always wanted to do a Christmas movie. And I got my wish. It was on my bucket list. And when I got that, it was a huge strike off my bucket list.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again, like I'm gonna move over to some TV stuff, but I forgot that Peter Scolari was in that, and just to think of them going back to bosom buddies, gosh.
Yeah, I love Peter. Oh God, what a nice guy.
Yeah, he was one of my favorites. I was sad when he passed away. I got to talk to you about one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Eddie. Magnum P.I.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Very few shows are as cool as Magnum P.I., man.
Totally. And the question, no, I never drove the red Ferrari. I never rode in the red Ferrari. I did get to lean on it. Tom didn't take it for a ride, but I leaned on it. I go, hey, I'm leaning on the Ferrari. So that's close as I got.
So
Tom
Go ahead.
Oh, he is such a great guy, such a wonderful, nice guy. Just the nicest guy ever. We met the first day. He goes, Eddie, I haven't seen Grease yet, but I like you in WarGames. This is Tom Selleck telling me this stuff, Such a great. And by the way, when I met Tom Hanks, he goes, I loved you and I want to hold your hand, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I love the end of Grease. This is these guys. They're talking to a little punk like me, and they were so nice, so gracious. But Tom Selleck was so nice. And by the way, I'll tell you something. You saw the episode we did, the softball one? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a great baseball player. I think he played semi-pro, but we were, he took batting practice and he was whacking them out of the park. They were pitching to him and he was just smacking the ball like 300, 400 feet. I mean,
it's obvious. It's obvious in the episode, because early in the episode when they're practicing, he's doing batting practice. Yeah, and
he was like a little kid. Fanacek. He was a Tigers fan. And he had a jersey that Tigers sent him. He's like a little kid. Eddie, look at this jersey I got. He was like a little kid, and it was his Detroit Tigers jersey. He was really proud of it.
Oh, is he really a Tigers fan? He worked that character because that was Magnum's thing. He was always wearing the Detroit Tigers hat.
Yes, he's a big time Tigers fan. Yeah,
that is funny. I didn't know that. And you know what's cool about that episode for you is you got to film at the Robin's Nest, so you're there on the property. That was pretty neat.
Exactly. Well, and get it. It's a good one. It's credit that's with him. I wasn't actually with him, but I was with him in the same episode. Orson Welles. Orson was the narrator.
That's right.
I never got to meet him, but technically I was in a TV with Orson Welles. Who? What can you say? He's Orson Welles.
They never did make that reveal, and I think in that entire series, I don't think they ever show Orson. I think
they never built him as Orson Welles. They never built him, did they?
Right. Yeah, I think it was never
we would watch it at home. I remember. Yeah, and we'd go, that sounds like Orson Welles, but we were not, because he kind of makes it sound a little deeper or something. But we go, that sounds like Orson Welles, but we never knew. Now, of course, you have the internet and you can look up anything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, then it's become so obvious. But I got you I don't want to keep it too long. Another show I grew up on. That I got to talk about, Facts of Life, man. I love it. I mean, that show almost defined the early 80s. And
I used to watch it all the time. Yeah, I never met Blair. I met Tootie was on it. Kim Fields was in it, and of course Mindy Cohn, who I did a lot of voiceovers with. It. We did Scooby-Doo's later. We did several Scooby-Doo's. She's a doll. I love her, and I love Kim. And I met Joe, Nancy McKeon. She came on the set one day. Is on. We just kibitz for a minute, but all the girls were so nice. It was a pilot. Our episode. It was called The Arena. Was it The Arena? I'm not sure what it was called. Or what was it called?
The Big Fight.
The Big Fight. Okay, whatever it was. It was a pilot. They were hoping it would be like, that was a girls' school, and they were hoping this could be a boys' school. And it was a pilot that never sold. But that was what our show was.
Cool guest in it, too, because, you were in that with Scott Baio's cousin.
Oh, is that right?
I think, is it Jimmy Baio? I didn't write it down.
Oh, okay. I remember Jimmy Baio.
Crispin Glover was in that episode, too.
Yeah, that was his first role. Yes, one line. Yeah, Crispin and I were his over. That was his very first role. He says, come in, coach, or something. He says one line. Yeah.
And he'd go on to work with him.
I love him from the word go. Later, we became friends for life, and I played poker with him one night. When I did Surf 2, the guys get together and play poker, and one of them knew Chris, and he came over and played poker with us. He's just like McFly, his character McFly in Back to the Future. Yeah. I lost. Oh shoot. Oh well, I'll bet $10. And he's like just like George McFly.
So when I'm doing the show, I like to dive deep into credits, and so sometimes what I focus on is just the names I would recognize, like directed by James Burrows. So I'll do an episode about James Burrows, like who was that person? And a name that you see a lot is Asad Kalata.
Yes, he directed our Facts of Life. Yeah,
he sure did. What was that like? Because he's a legendary film or TV director. I mean, that guy.
Oh, he was wonderful. He always wore a sweater around his shoulders tied. I remember. Super nice director. I loved working for him. He was really, really nice. I just remember what a nice guy he was. It was a joyous, fun shoot.
That's great, man. Well, I had one last question for you.
Sure.
Throw me some more Beatles trivia. I want to redeem myself.
Okay, let me try to think of a good one. Here. You can edit out this dead time, I hope. Just let me think of one, please. Give me 1 minute.
Not now you told me that I'm not. That'd be awesome.
Okay.
No.
Okay. What's the only song John Lennon said, the only song he ever wrote that he didn't like?
The only song he ever wrote that he didn't like?
Yeah.
Damn it. I thought I'd be much better at this, Eddie. Give me a second. I don't know.
It's Only Love.
Really? He didn't like that song?
Yeah. He didn't like that song. No, it sounds kind of Dylan-esque. Sounds like a Bob Dylan song, but he said this is the only song of mine I ever wrote that I didn't like.
Excellent. Well, now I know. I'm gonna reread my books, and next time I do this for you, Eddie, I'm coming correct, man.
I want to Fanacek. If you're a real Beatles fan, hang on one second. I just want to recommend. It's called. Oh, I got the title. It's called. I don't know if you got it. It's in the last 2 or 3 years. It's called 150 Glimpses of the Beatles. Have you seen that one? It should be in your bookstore. If you're a real Beatles fan, this book has great news stories. And I've read 600 or 700 books on the Beatles at least. Everything worthwhile I've ever read on the Beatles. Poetry books, picture books, everything. This is called 150 Glimpses of the Beatles. To any Beatles fan, read this book. I highly recommend it.
Will do. Well, Eddie, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I think my wife would like to say goodbye.
Thank you so much. That was the best.
Yeah.
Thank Mrs. Fanacek. It's such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for bringing your beauty and your grace to the show. It was so nice talking to you.
Yeah, I have a feeling that you are very much, you also have a lot of that energy of bringing joy to people and not saying a bad word about anyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just been delightful to listen to you, and you've made me smile so much through this entire podcast.
Thank you, Mrs. Fanacek. I appreciate it. And thank you, Fanacek.
Of course, Eddie, thank you for doing this. I hope I get a chance to talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Night. Wow, how cool is that? Eddie Deezen, he is a gentleman and a scholar, a Beatles scholar to be specific. Hey, if you want to watch this episode, you can watch it now because I have a YouTube channel now. Click the link for Fanacek's YouTube channel. You can watch the video and I'll be posting more interviews on there. Hey, if you like me, hit me up on Twitter at Fanacek Podcast. You can hit me up on Facebook, Real Fanacek, or you can even email me, fanacekpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you to Mr. Eddie Deezen. Thank you all for listening, and stay tuned for the next exciting episode of Fanacek.